Alright, Plankwalkers, I have a bit of a confession to make. I just can't recently stop thinking about my boy Shanks here. I mean, Shanks is everywhere all the time in the Elbaf arc without even having properly shown up yet. And it's honestly been driving my friends crazy because I'm constantly just theorizing about what's gonna happen with him. But the craziest thing about this is that we learned that at one point in his life, Shanks actually went to visit his family in Marijoa. Like, what? You can't just drop that info out of nowhere. Oda's just gonna casually drop that Shanks lore bomb and then just move on like it's no. I need to know, like, when did he go? What did he do up there? Did he take some secret treasure and dip out? Did he, like, form some alliance with the Gorosei? Why did he go there and why did he leave? Did he actually meet with the 5 elders in chapter 907? But even more importantly than all of that, there is one question that I really want to discuss with y'all today, because we do know, of course, that Shanks eventually came back down from the Holy Land and became a pirate once again with his own crew, but what if he had never left to begin with? I guess what I'm trying to say here, in other words, is the title of this video. What do you think would happen if Shanks had actually become a celestial dragon for good? And so with this really juicy topic in mind, I instantly jumped to some absolutely crazy conspiracy theories like Shanks could have been the one to kill Whitebeard, or Shanks and Mihawk could have been best buddies in the Holy Knights, or maybe even the craziest of them all, Shanks could have exposed Emo to the entire world like he's Buggy video bombing during the war at Marineford. Alright, hold on for a moment though, maybe we shouldn't go quite that far yet. So why don't we back way up and start with when in the world this scenario would even work to begin with? I mean, let's think about it. Shanks, a celestial dragon, it pretty much goes against everything that we think we know about him. Now, we could just imagine that Garling was maybe a responsible father and never brought his newborn children to what basically turned into a massacre at God Valley. I mean, if that happened, maybe Shanks would have never been there for Roger to scoop him up like a little baby treasure. But let me ask you this, is that really the most interesting scenario that we can actually come up with here? Like Shanks just growing up there and basically turning into Shamrock 2.0? As you can probably deduce from my very rhetorical question, I don't really think so. Which means that instead I want to jump ahead about 14 or so years to just after the Roger pirates find Laugh Tale and the king of the pirates announces that he's gonna disband his own crew. Because I don't know if you remember this entire scene, but it's actually one of the greatest mysteries in all of Shanks' life. Like, you see this panel right here? Why in the world is Shanks crying? What did Roger tell him or ask him? Was it just that Roger knew he was gonna die and Shanks is sad about that? I mean, could be, but I have some other ideas personally, and I really want to hear what you all think. But first, we have to remember that Shanks and Buggy didn't actually go to Laugh Tale themselves. Instead, our kind-hearted Shanks here stayed behind with his friend, but I can kind of imagine a scenario where during this time, maybe Buggy told Shanks some rumors that he heard. Like maybe everyone else on the crew knew that Shanks was the son of a celestial dragon, and Buggy actually spilled the beans to Shanks. And that way it would actually make a lot of sense that Shanks would then ask Roger if that was true, which could lead to this crying scene right here. You might think we're getting a little bit sidetracked here, but I do think it's kind of important to try and understand Shanks' motivation for going up to Marijoa in the actual story. I mean, he was raised his entire life by pirates who are basically the opposite to everything the celestial dragons stand for. So why in the world would Shanks ever go up and visit them, and why would they even allow that? Well, if he really did get shocked by this information, I could kind of see him making the very rash decision to go see his family, even if he knew that he would at some point come back down to become a pirate. But anyways, let's just say that Shanks is 14 or 15 years old here, and he's gone up to Marijoa to see his dear old father and his long-lost twin brother. And I'm just so sure that they would throw like a party for him maybe. Don't you all think that Shamrock and Garling would be all lovey-dovey? Yeah, right. I mean, no, they're probably way more likely to lock him in the dungeon like Sanji's father did to him, but maybe he has a real mother up there who's still alive, very rare in One Piece, who would maybe take care of him. That would of course be a shocking change for once, a mother who is alive and loving. Stop it already. We're already writing fanfiction here. That's too much for One Piece. Oda better not give us Shanks' mom before Luffy's, by the way, but maybe there's no living mother up there at all. Maybe Shanks is already just so strong that his family straight up accepts him just based on his abilities. But that already brings us to maybe the most important important and difficult question, why would Shanks ever want to stay with the Celestial Dragons? Like, honestly, this is the part I'm really not quite sure yet how to make sense of. My team and I kind of went through a lot of ideas together about how to justify why Shanks would ever stay, so I'm going to share some of my ideas here, but I also want to hear what you think about them as well. So let's kick things off with the number one thing that we actually do know about Shanks, because the first thing that we see him and his crew doing, which is the same thing he's always doing when we check in on him, this man likes to drink and really likes to party. So maybe he rolls up to Marijoa, sees the limitless resources and food there, and is like, hey, you know what? Who needs that stinky life of sailing and having to fight for our food and, you know, like worrying about the end of the world? I can have everything I need right here, guys. So maybe Shanks just decides to bum around in Marijoa and enjoy a life full of all the drinks and all the food that he could ever want. I mean, he does love to party after all. That's 100% the bad future Shanks if there was ever gonna be one. You know, the ones that Oda likes to draw in those SBS volumes. But okay, I can already see you throwing some shade at me in the comments for this one, so let's stick with a motivation that actually makes a lot more sense for Shanks's real character. Because the other main thing that we do know about Shanks is that he very likely does know some of the true history of the world. I mean, sure, he didn't actually go to Laugh Tale with the rest of the crew, but he was with all of them when they found plenty of the poneglyphs and kind of translated everything, and then of course when they came back. So don't you all kind of think it's virtually kind of impossible that he doesn't know anything about Joy Boy or Nika or like the two worlds or how to save the world? I'm 100% sure that he does, especially because it seems like he's been waiting for someone like Luffy to inherit Roger's will and then guide that person to be the next one to find Laugh Tale to begin with, basically. Hold on though, I actually completely forgot about Luffy in this scenario. If Shanks stays up in Marijoa, what happens to Luffy? Like, in that case, does he even get inspired to become a pirate? Does he get himself killed because he doesn't have his secret Straw Hat plot armor? Or does the worst happen where Garp actually successfully forces him to become a marine? Yikes. I mean, I did make a whole video on Luffy becoming marine, but let's just ignore Luffy for now, but he will come back in the story. Instead, let's for now go back to Shanks, because if he knows about the true history of the world, and if he truly is preparing the way for the next Joy Boy, then clearly he wants to help the world, right? Like, doesn't that make the most sense for what he's been doing all along? And so I can kind of imagine a situation where Shanks goes up to Marijoa and decides to stay because he thinks that he can make the world a better place by becoming a Celestial Dragon. Or maybe on the other hand, maybe he found out that to save the world, you have to first destroy it, kind of like all the Harley lore we're learning about recently, and Loki thinking that he's the one who needs to save the world by destroying it. So maybe he learned all of that and the prophecies and thought, nah, I can do better probably. And so he decided to become a Celestial Dragon, kind of to check in with what like these guys know about, you know, how to save the world potentially. And I assume that maybe you're still not completely with me on the whole motivation for staying thing, and that's fair to be honest, but let's actually roll with this idea for now, because I think it actually makes a lot of sense also given Shanks' character. So let's just go with this. Shanks stays in Marijoa because he wants to make the world a better place, and oh boy, is this gonna lead to some trouble down the line, I think. But now we also do have to ask the most important question in all of this: what happens after? Like, what happens next? You might actually think that his family would straight up hate him, and I certainly think that most of the Celestial Dragons would kind of be against this because of, you know, his life as a pirate on board of the Pirate King's ship nonetheless. I mean, just look at how they treated Doflamingo when he tried to go back to Marijoa. That poor kid didn't do anything. He was gone for like a year and they straight up rejected him. So wouldn't they just do the same thing to Shanks? Well, I gotta say, maybe, but on the other hand, Shanks was able to go up there and leave again in the official storyline, so it's not like they would just outright kill him, or maybe they can't. But whatever the truth is, I do think that his family would only truly care about his strength. I mean, Shamrock here doesn't seem to have strong feelings about Shanks as far as we can tell. He's just some pirate who went astray, and they happen to be related, unfortunately. So if Shanks now decided to stay, I do think that there's a decent chance that his dad and brother would, like, to a certain degree at least, take him back in. And based on his own strength though, it seems pretty obvious, yes, that Shanks would probably train to become a holy knight just like his father and just like his brother. Okay, this is all good, but from here on out, all we can basically do is start speculating the most reasonable course, because we have absolutely no idea yet how the Holy Knights are chosen or trained, besides the fact that they sometimes try to recruit from the outside world, like they tried doing with Loki here. Like, is there some sort of training camp for the Holy Knights? Are they just sent out on secret missions, or do they just basically fight against each other for years and years to become really strong? I sadly don't have the answer quite yet. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because at this point, all I can say is that Shanks would probably grow up to be just as strong as he is right now, would be my guess. I am really curious though if Shanks' mother is still up in Marijoa, because that is honestly another reason I could potentially see for him choosing to visit the Holy Land and stay. Like, wouldn't you want to meet the mother that you never knew about if you could? But based on everything that we learned during Bonnie and Kuma's flashback, he most likely did not have the happy reunion that he was hoping for. The reality is that his mother was potentially a slave, or if not, then she might just be a celestial dragon who is just as bad as Garling. I'm just picturing some lady with like weird sun-shaped hair, just like Garling has the moon updo thing. Or who knows, maybe we're all wrong. Maybe Garling is a great father who loves his wife, and the kids get to play in the park and go to school, and life is just all nice and rosy and kind. I mean, it's possible, right? Tell me that's possible, please. I guess we had Homing, who was a nice dude. I mean, I think we all know it wouldn't be that easy for him either way, but what if I told you that things could have been way darker for Shanks than you could have ever imagined? Because there are some other really important questions we just have to ask about Shanks' hypothetical life up there in the Holy Land, and I'll just warn you right now, some of this gets pretty grim, I think. Because here's something that I really want you to keep in mind. Shanks is coming from the Roger Pirates, and the Celestial Dragons, or at least Imu and the Gorosei, probably do know that the Roger Pirates learned about the true history that they have tried so hard to keep a secret for all these years. So if they know about Shanks' history, they might just straight up decide that they need to know what Shanks knows. So you know what that means, right? Interrogations, torture. I mean, who knows what they might do to learn the truth about Roger and what Roger's actually planning. I mean, could even want to see if Shanks knows where the other Roger pirates are so they could actually wipe them out. I mean, which could be tragic for Shanks, as we'll discuss in just a moment. But yeah, life for Shanks in the Holy Land probably be closer to living hell at the beginning, even though he wants to make the world a better place still. I mean, for all we know, Garling might even have had some real rivalry with Roger based on their clash on God Valley, so could treat Shanks even worse because of that potentially. But luckily, we do know that this boy has virtually unbreakable will, so I do think that he's strong enough to pull through just fine. Just like how you can pull through and support the channel by joining our Patreon, and just like Celestial Dragon Shanks, you'd get access to a ton of exclusive perks like special monthly videos, discussions, polls, artwork, you know, unique bonus content. If you'd like to party it up with us and help support all of our special projects at the same time, you can join up using the link in the description. Back to the video, quick plug. Okay, so now we've talked about him going up there and training to be a Holy Knight, but I'm kind of really curious to know if you think that he would end up as strong as he is right now as a pirate. I mean, we're talking about probably the top 5 strongest people in the One Piece universe. Could he still make that same level if he stayed and became a Celestial Dragon? And in my head, there's kind of arguments for both cases, and I just know you all want to talk more about this, so let's get into a little bit of the details here. I do think that there's a really strong case that we can make that he can grow up to be a Yonko tier level character even as a Holy Knight. I mean, we all kind of assume that that's the level Garling and Shamrock are on as well, don't we? So why couldn't Shanks do the same? Well, actually, Garling and Shamrock might be the very reasons he wouldn't be able potentially to do it, because if he has an older brother who doesn't like him and maybe bullies him constantly, it's kind of possible that by staying, Shanks would never be able to reach his full potential. On top of that, we kind of know that the real Shanks has reached his status as a top dog based purely on his swordsmanship and hockey, but would Celestial Dragon Shanks be able to do the same thing? I mean, don't forget that almost everyone related to the Holy Knights and Gorosei have some sort of really weird, scary, and creepy demonic powers. So would Shanks be forced to use these powers as well potentially? That's a pretty big and important question that I'm not 100% sure about. Like, would Shanks get a magic sword like his brother? I think that might honestly be worse for Shanks, because we have seen just how strong he is without any type of devil fruit power, so having these new types of abilities might even make him not train his hockey as much as he did in the actual story, potentially making him weaker weaker overall. But then again, if that were the case, would Celestial Dragon Shanks even ever agree to accept these powers, or could this be the thing that sends him back to being a pirate, just like another top-tier swordsman who we've actually also speculated recently might have also left the Holy Knights at a really young age? And if you don't know where I'm going with this, let me quickly bring up a theory that has been in the community ever since the Holy Knights were first shown in chapter 1083, because basically this theory kind of tries to explain all of Mihawk's connections to Imu, the Empty Throne in Marijoa, and even the Holy Knights. And don't worry, I'm not going to get into all the detail here, but you can kind of make connections between Imu and Mihawk's strange eyes. They both have this very particular double circle thingy going on. Then there's the fact that Mihawk's sword Yoru has very similar markings to those on the Empty Throne. So who knows, maybe Yoru once belonged to Imu or one of the Holy Knights. And then finally, we have Mihawk's strong Christian and European themes going on with his design, which again is very similar to the vibe we're getting from the Holy Knights in recent chapters and the entire holy, like celestial dragons, saints, that entire thing. So while this theory isn't 100% confirmed at all at this point, there is at least a really decent chance that Mihawk once grew up or trained with the Holy Knights early in his life as well, which I personally absolutely love as an idea. Because if that were to be the case, it is time for Shanks to throw a real party, because our Celestial Dragon Boy here could have an actual friend to bond with early in his life. Like, seriously, if Shamrock is the terrible big brother we all think he would probably be, then it would be very important for Shanks to have someone he can actually befriend, and who better to do that than the man who he actually used to duel in the story, because his best buddy Mihawk would definitely make a way better childhood friend than Buggy, let's be real. And who knows, maybe their duels in the Holy Land would be just as legendary as they were down on the Blue Ocean. That could even get Shanks promoted above Shamrock potentially, which would be a really interesting dynamic, which I'm pretty sure wouldn't have any consequences ever in the future of the story, right? Now, of course, even if Mihawk was a Holy Knight in the past, clearly he dipped out at some point in the story, so I don't think he would have stayed there forever. Eventually, Shanks would have been on his own once again, and I'm kind of curious what you think about this. Was Mihawk a Holy Knight at some point? And if he was, would he want to train with someone like Celestial Dragon Shanks, who grew up as a pirate? And I mean, could this friendship even make Shanks stronger than Shamrock in this timeline? I also kind of wonder if in this scenario, maybe a friendship with Shanks could make Mihawk potentially even stay in the Holy Lands. Perhaps he could even help with his eventual plan to help make the world a better place, because Mihawk doesn't exactly seem like a bad person in the story either, right? So to answer that, we kind of need to power scale Shamrock and his very broken Cerberus powers, which do seem crazy OP if you ask me. I mean, look at this thing. Okay, but hold on, this is actually kind of tough even for a genuine certified power scaler as I am. I mean, we don't even know what Shamrock's true powers really are at this point. Does he only have the Demon Dog sword? Because that alone seems to put him close to Yonko tier with the damage that he did to Loki right there, but he's almost guaranteed to have even more powers, because I think it's highly unlikely that Oda revealed his strongest power right out of the get-go, right? Or does he have other hellish powers that we just haven't seen yet? Because that would kind of put him on a whole different level altogether. And where did he even get those powers to begin with? Is there like some giant weapons vault in Marijoa that is just stuffed with the absolutely most absurdly powerful weapons that they have or something? I mean, now saying it out loud, that makes a lot of sense, I guess. Maybe that's where this guy got his elephant sword, though I guess Vegapunk made that? Maybe different. But bringing this back, if Shamrock ended up with some crazy broken powers, then I think it's pretty likely that Celestial Dragon Shanks would have the chance to gain some absolutely busted abilities of his own, right? And even though I don't really think that he would want any special powers or devil fruits, again, there's a reason why none of the red hair pirates have a devil fruit, I can tell that you want to talk about what powers he might get just as badly as I would. So what the heck, it's our video, so let's just do it. Let's get freaky here. If you look at everything that we do know about the Gorosei and Holy Knight's power so far, there are two real ways to look at it. First, some of this power clearly seems to come from Imu, because unfortunately for Saturn over here, Imu can just snatch the power back whenever they want. At least that's how I interpret this panel. But then based on that idea, it might be possible that all the Holy Knights and the Gorosei get their strange powers from Imu. But hold on though, we also know that Gunko right here here has a devil fruit. So clearly not all the powers do come from Imu, although her arrow abilities do look somewhat like the attacks that Imu used against Sabo, which is confusing, so maybe they're related after all? But anyways, what powers would really make sense for our celestial dragon Shanks here? I really don't think that he would take a devil fruit, given that, you know, he grew up around a full crew of pirates who didn't want them either. On the other hand, his good friend Buggy accidentally ate one, and we do know that Shanks would do pretty much anything for Buggy when they were kids, so who knows? Like, maybe Shanks would eat one just to sympathize with his friend at this point. But then there's also the chance that he could get a broken sword with broken powers, just like his brother. So what could those powers actually be? What makes sense here? Let's put on our Oda head here for a second. Well, we do know that Shanks has a really strong tie to Norse mythology, so it could be some power related to that. Some powers related to the fire giant Sartor would make a lot of sense, or if we want to stick closer to his brother's powers, maybe Shanks could get the powers of a different god of the underworld like Osiris from Egyptian mythology, or even Hel from Norse mythology. Or honestly, what probably might make the most sense is that the sword Shanks already has, Griffin, is already a powerful sword that he did get from the Holy Knights, because we do know that Shanks did not always have this legendary sword. I mean, he certainly didn't have it as a kid, he didn't have it back during Luffy's childhood. Like, Griffin only kind of suddenly shows up in chapter 234, so Shanks may have gotten it sometime after Luffy ate his devil fruit as a child. So was maybe this really when Shanks went up to the Holy Land? Again, not really sure. Could be cool though, and it does seem like a decent possibility. If that were true though, maybe Shanks got Griffin from his family. We do know that his dad and brother both use the same type of sabers just like Griffin, and since a Griffin is a mythological creature related to the heavens, so maybe it's just like a family tradition to wield a magical saber with a, you know, magical creature in it. That kind of sounds like it could be a real possibility, don't you think? And I gotta say, it would be pretty sick if that was the actual origin story in the real official storyline. So who knows, maybe Shanks already has a sword with magical powers just like his brother, and we just haven't seen it yet. And I mean, if the anime is anything to go by, which I'm a little bit skeptical of, but it does show a cool Griffin effect when Shanks one-shotted Kid outside of Elbaf, so maybe they're already hinting at the truth there a little bit. I'm sure you have more thoughts about this, but I do think we've talked enough about his training now. I'm sure you actually want to hear what really happens with Celestial Dragon Shanks in the future, and to do this, let's bring it all the way back to how we started and why he decided to stay here in the first place. Because since we decided not to change Shanks' personality too much, he would definitely still want to help the world become a better place. However, I really do feel like after years of seeing the greed, corruption, and possibly even being forced to do some horrible things as a Holy Knight, his outlook on the world might get a whole lot darker. I mean, honestly, who knows what kind of crazy missions he would be sent on? Would he have to kill other pirates? Would he be forced to execute some of the Celestial Dragons? And we do know that this is a thing. It actually happened to the only good Celestial Dragon that we know about at this point. Like, maybe after seeing just how much power the world government really has, he might lose his own hope for the future. I mean, just think about what Shanks does in the real storyline. It's not like he's going around saving all the innocent people in the world. He does tend to protect some weaker pirates with his fleet, but then on the other hand, he's also no stranger to absolute violence and, going all out on someone either, like what they did to Bartolomeo and Kid. Which to me makes him so much more than just a straight up good guy, and really makes me think that Shanks' outlook on life could get really dark after being surrounded by the evil and corruption in the upper tiers of the world government. So of course, what does he do here? Does he leave like Mihawk probably did? Like, that's certainly one option, but at this point Shanks wouldn't have the same influence as a pirate, so he wouldn't be able to do as much to prepare for Luffy like he did when he had stayed a pirate to begin with and started his crew. So what can he really do here? Honestly, I kind of think like he might need a spark of inspiration at this point, so maybe he hears about what Luffy is doing in the world, like the chaos that he caused declaring war on the world government in Enies Lobby, or his attack on the world nobles in Sabaody. Now of course he wouldn't know Luffy in the scenario, but perhaps seeing what this kid is doing could inspire him to make a change here. And there were really two ideas in particular for what he could do that stuck out after all the brainstorming we did. Because can you think of the only true honest threats to the Celestial Dragons besides Luffy, of course? Can you do it? Okay, well, just like me, you probably first thought of the Revolutionary Army, which is one of the correct answers. So perhaps Celestial Dragon Shanks starts feeding information to the revolutionaries to help them in their fight against the world nobles. Or maybe he gets even more extreme and helps them sneak into Marijoa to stage some sort of grand coup. In fact, this could even lead into an even more dangerous situation for the world government, because if the revolutionaries did attack Marijoa, it could give Shanks the best opportunity to strike the most devastating blow to the Celestial Dragons that the world has ever seen. I mean, just think about it for a moment. What is the single most threatening thing to the Gorosei and Imu? Like, the one thing that they've tried to wipe out completely over the last centuries? Of course, I'm talking about information. That's right, like the true history of the world. They want nothing more than to erase all of that knowledge forever. So after everything we've talked about, I think it would make perfect sense for Shanks to do what Vegapunk should have done with his broadcast and drop the true bombshells that would completely shake the world. Because you kind of have to think that there is some evidence of the true history that Shanks could find in the Holy Land here. Like some clues of what really happened during the Void Century, the existence of Imu, the treasures of Marijoa, like the secret treasure, and like this more than anything could really throw the world into chaos and prep it for revolution. It would cause even more rebellions and be the perfect thing to achieve his own goal of making the world a better place. Plus, I just can't get the image out of my head of Shanks pulling a buggy style video drop like at Marineford. And there would truly be no bigger secret than the existence of Imu as the secret world ruler and his true nature as some sort of demonic god. And if all of this was exposed, it would literally change everything in the story. But what's even crazier is that in the real storyline, Imu might even be the source of a secret third power system that Oda has been working on in the world of One Piece that anyone can learn. I'm talking, of course, about demon powers. And it might be even stronger than Haki and Devil Fruits put together. So if you want to hear why I think that there's a secret third power system in One Piece, you can watch that video right here. Otherwise though, Shanks so much for watching, and Shanks again to all of your fantastic Patreons over here. You guys really, really are awesome. Big shout out, and I will see you guys in the next one.